The first sound that morning wasn't the alarm clock. It was the click of high heels across our hardwood floor. Sharp. Decisive. Like punctuation marks in a language I didn't speak anymore. I lifted my head from the couch where I'd fallen asleep with my laptop half open, the blue glow of unfinished code still dancing on the screen. The living room smelled faintly of burnt coffee and rain-soaked city air drifting in from the window. She was already dressed. Tessa. My wife. Charcoal gray suit, tailored within an inch of her life. A glossy leather bag slung over her shoulder. Hair pinned, lipstick perfect, perfume cutting through the stale quiet. She looked like she belonged in a boardroom at dawn, not in the apartment we'd once called ours. Morning, I muttered, rubbing the back of my neck. She didn't look at me right away. She was busy pouring coffee into a travel mug, her phone buzzing on the counter beside her. The screen lit up with a name I'd grown used to seeing at all hours. Lucas. Her voice finally came, clipped and casual. Didn't hear you come to bed. That's because I didn't, I said. No response. Just another message flashing across the phone, and her thumb darting to unlock it, screen angled slightly away from me. I swallowed the bitter taste creeping up my throat. I wasn't stupid. I knew patterns. I was 35, a systems analyst. My life was about recognizing the way things connected, or failed to. Servers, networks, human behavior, it was all the same. When something's off, you don't need proof right away. You feel it humming under the surface, like static before a storm. You're out early again, I said, trying to keep my voice neutral. She finally turned, mug in hand. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. Big client day. We're finalizing pitches. We? Her lashes flickered. Lucas and I. Who else? The way she said his name, like he was an inevitability, like questioning it was childish, made something tighten in my chest. I stood, shutting my laptop. You've been working late every night this week. Her jaw flexed. That's what ambition looks like, Ethan. Not everyone has the luxury of clocking out at 5. I should have let it go. Should have let the storm pass. But something in me snapped, quiet and dangerous. Ambition or Lucas? The silence that followed could have sliced the air in two. Tessa's nails clicked against the travel mug. Her gaze sharpened, steel beneath the makeup. Don't start this again. I'm not starting anything. I'm noticing. You're accusing. There's a difference. She slung her bag over her shoulder and headed for the door. The scent of her perfume trailed after her like a warning flare. She paused only long enough to deliver the line that would stay with me for weeks. At least Lucas doesn't make me feel guilty for having dreams. The door shut. The echo lingered. I stood alone in the apartment, the rain outside tapping the windows like fingers drumming impatience. Every detail of our life together, the framed vacation photos, the coffee mugs with our initials, the throw blanket she'd picked, suddenly felt staged, like set pieces in a play I'd been recast from. My phone buzzed. A message from Mason, my best friend since middle school. Burgers tonight? Need a break from spreadsheets. I stared at the screen, thumb hovering, heart pounding. For the first time, I didn't want to answer with the usual easy sarcasm. For the first time, I knew something wasn't just off. Something was broken. Because marriage isn't supposed to feel like monitoring server logs for failure alerts. And yet here I was, watching the system fail line by line, alarm by alarm, while the person I trusted most walked out the door with someone else's name lighting up her phone. I pressed the power button until the screen went dark. The reflection staring back at me wasn't the easygoing, dependable man I'd been for years. It was someone different. Someone tired of silence. Someone who, if pushed far enough, might finally push back. The storm outside grew louder. And for the first time, I let myself wonder, had it already started raining, or was I just now noticing I was standing in it? The rain didn't stop for 3 days. It came down in thin, silver sheets that blurred the city skyline into watercolor. I buried myself in work, But even lines of code couldn't silence the echo of Tessa's parting shot. At least Lucas doesn't make me feel guilty for having dreams. It wasn't just the words, it was the way she'd said his name. Lucas. Like he was an answer to a question I hadn't asked. By Thursday, I couldn't take the walls of the apartment anymore. I packed up my laptop and headed to the coffee shop down the block, the kind of place where old wood tables leaned slightly and the barista always spelled my name wrong on the cup. A second office, a refuge. That's when it happened. From my seat by the window, I looked up between keystrokes and saw them. Across the street, in the corner booth at Romano's, sat Tessa and Lucas. I told myself it was nothing. Business lunch. Colleagues meet at restaurants all the time. I even tried to convince myself to look back at my screen. But then I saw it. Lucas reached across the table, casual, confident, his hand brushing hers. And she didn't flinch. Didn't laugh it off. Didn't recoil the way a married woman should when another man tries to bridge that line. She smiled. Not the polite, work-meeting smile. Not the half-hearted grin I'd been getting lately. This was the smile, the one that lit her face from within, the one I'd fallen in love with before I even knew her middle name. And it wasn't for me anymore. The espresso in my cup turned to ash in my mouth. I snapped a picture with my phone before my rational mind could stop me. Proof, though blurry through rain-specked glass, still proof. My hand shook so badly I nearly dropped the phone. I didn't text her. I didn't storm across the street. Instead, I dialed Mason. He picked up on the second ring. "What's up, man? You sound like death." "Brewers. 20 minutes. Silence on the line. Then, "I'll be there." Brewers was our place, the dive bar where neon signs hummed louder than the jukebox and the fries were always greasy. He found me in a back booth, hunched over a beer like it might tell me what to do next. "You look like someone ran over your dog," Mason said, sliding in across from me. "Spill." I told him everything. The late nights, the clipped answers, the texts at 2 a.m. I showed him the picture, zoomed in until the pixels blurred. Lucas's hand. Her smile. He didn't laugh. Didn't dismiss it. His expression hardened. "Damn. I keep telling myself it could be innocent," I said, voice low. "But it doesn't feel innocent." Mason leaned back, folding his arms. "Doesn't look innocent either. But feelings aren't enough. You need to know. Otherwise she'll turn it back on you. Gaslight you. Make you think you're paranoid. She's already doing that," I muttered. Then we stop playing blind. We find out the truth. All of it. There was something about the way he said we. Like he'd already decided I wasn't going through this alone. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay awake on the couch, staring at the ceiling fan, listening to the storm chew at the windows. Memories hit me in flashes. Our wedding dance, the first apartment we couldn't afford, the weekend road trips when we laughed until our voices cracked. Was all of it already broken back then, or did it crack later, piece by piece? The thought of her laughing with Lucas, of him knowing the curve of her smile the way I once did, burned through me like acid. But underneath the rage, something colder coiled tight. I didn't just want answers anymore. I wanted leverage. When Tessa came home past midnight, she thought I was asleep. She slipped off her heels, careful not to make noise, and padded toward the bedroom. Her phone buzzed as she set it on the nightstand. I stayed still, eyes closed, listening. The faint scrape of her nail against the screen. The muted laugh under her breath. And in that moment I knew, whatever storm I was stepping into, I wasn't walking in blind again. Saturday night, Tessa told me she had a client dinner. The words slid out smooth, practiced. Too smooth. "Meridian," she said, slipping earrings into place, checking her reflection in the hallway mirror. "Big opportunity. Could be career-defining." Her voice was even, but her eyes flicked, just once, toward her phone charging on the console. And there it was again. Lucas. His name glowing like a neon sign I couldn't unsee. I forced a smile. "Maybe I should come. Show support." The brush paused mid-stroke through her hair. What? Clients love when spouses show interest. I could network a little. Bring my IT angle. For a heartbeat, she froze. Then the mask returned, the polished grin that never reached her eyes anymore. That's sweet, Ethan, but this is delicate. Industry talk. You'd be bored out of your mind. Delicate. Another word for don't come. I nodded, pretending to concede. Of course. Next time. But by the time she kissed my cheek, grabbed her clutch, and disappeared into the drizzle, I'd already made my decision. Meridian was the kind of place that made you whisper when you walked in. White tablecloths, glass chandeliers that threw prisms across the room, wine lists thick as novels. I arrived 30 minutes early, claiming a table in the corner with a clear view of the dining room. Mason slid into the seat opposite me, hair still damp from the rain. You sure about this? I need to know. Once and for all. He didn't argue. He just ordered whiskey and scanned the room like backup on a stakeout. At exactly 7:30, Tessa walked in. Not with clients. With him. Lucas wore a suit that screamed money. She wore a smile that wasn't for me. The hostess led them to a small table by the window, intimate and glowing under a halo of candlelight. No clients. No work folders. Just two people leaning too close, laughing too softly, drinking wine too expensive for a business dinner. It wasn't the kiss I dreaded. It was worse. The way she tilted her head when he spoke. The way his hand lingered on the stem of her glass as if it were her skin. The kind of intimacy that doesn't happen overnight. It builds brick by brick, lie by lie. Jesus, Mason muttered. I sat frozen, every muscle locked, rage threading through my veins like fire. I wanted to storm across the room, flip the table, scream the betrayal so loud the chandeliers shattered. But then, something shifted. I remembered every time she'd laughed off my questions. Every time she'd made me feel small, paranoid, less than. And suddenly, I didn't want a scene. Not yet. I wanted something better. I wanted to be precise. Surgical. The kind of revenge that left no room for denial. I pulled out my phone. Not to text her. Not to confront. To open the cloud account we still shared. Photos, documents, messages. Our lives synced in neat folders. 20 minutes later, I had what I needed. Strings of texts. Explicit. Unfiltered. Evidence not just of betrayal but of coordination, with Kendra, her so-called best friend, creating alibis, weaving stories, mocking me behind my back. I showed Mason one thread where Lucas wrote, "Maybe we should cool it for a while." And Tessa shot back, "No way. I'm not letting Ethan's insecurity control my life." Kendra chimed in, "I'll post some group pics tonight. He'll never know." Mason whistled low. "They're not just cheating. They're orchestrating it." I stared at the screen, the glow illuminating my clenched fists. My pulse slowed, oddly calm. Because now the guessing game was over. It wasn't suspicion. It wasn't paranoia. It was truth. And truth was leverage. "They think I'm blind," I said quietly. "They think I'll keep doubting myself, keep swallowing their lies." Mason leaned in. "So what do you want to do?" I looked back at the table where my wife was laughing, head thrown back in a way she hadn't done with me in months. Lucas brushed a strand of hair from her cheek, like he owned the right. My answer came out steady, deliberate. "I'm going to stop being the victim." Mason's eyes searched mine, recognizing the shift, the fracture line finally breaking. "Ethan." But I was already picturing it. Not just confrontation. Exposure. A reveal so undeniable that not even Tessa's sharp tongue or Lucas's smirk could rewrite the story. This wasn't going to be a fight in the shadows. This was going to be a demolition. Public. Precise. Devastating. The first crack of thunder outside rattled the glass. And for the first time, I didn't feel like I was drowning in the storm. I felt like I was becoming it. By Monday, the decision had hardened in me like stone. No more waiting. No more second-guessing. I wasn't going to catch them in whispers and half-smiles. I was going to make them choke on their own words. The plan started simple: bait. Over breakfast, I asked Tessa if we could do dinner later that week. Just us. A chance to reconnect. She blinked, suspicious, as if time together was a foreign concept. Then she said the words I was counting on. Why don't we make it a group thing? Invite Lucas and Kendra. Her casual tone almost fooled me. Almost. But underneath was the calculation, strength in numbers, alibis reinforced. Perfect, I said, masking the ice behind my teeth. The night arrived like a storm that knew its target. Meridian again. Same chandelier light, same pristine tablecloths, only this time I had the table I requested, dead center, in the open, no shadows to hide in. Lucas showed first, beaming as though we were old college buddies. His handshake was warm, rehearsed. The smell of his cologne clung too thick, drowning out the scent of roasted garlic drifting from the kitchen. Ethan, he said, clapping my shoulder, Tessa tells me you wanted to get to know me better. Something like that, I replied. Tessa swept in behind him, eyes flicking to mine. Searching. Testing. Her smile was too bright, her laugh a beat too late. She'd dressed carefully, like armor. Then came Kendra, fashionably late, phone already up, documenting the evening with chirps of, "This is going to be so fun!" As if she were the host of a reality show no one asked for. We sat. Small talk spilled awkwardly across the table, industry jargon from Lucas, nods from Tessa, nervous laughter from Kendra. I listened, silent, letting them believe the script was still theirs. But I wasn't the same man they'd been gaslighting for months. I watched Tessa lean toward Lucas, caught the way her hand hovered too close to his, saw Kendra grin knowingly at her screen as though recording a secret play. Every glance, every chuckle, every stolen look fueled the storm inside me. At one point, Lucas reached over, squeezed Tessa's shoulder, and said, "Some partnerships just click, you know?" My knuckles went white around my fork. "Yes," I said evenly. "Some things are very natural." His smirk said he thought he'd won. But Mason's voice echoed in my head, "Don't go off script. Be precise." I excused myself halfway through the entree, heading not to the restroom but to the bar. There, a young AV technician waited, bribed in cash earlier that day. "You're sure this will work?" I asked. He shrugged. 5 minutes warning, I'll cue your file. You'll have the whole room's attention." Good. That was the point. When I returned, dessert had arrived. Lucas was feeding Tessa a forkful of cake, his hand brushing her lips. Kendra was snapping photos like paparazzi. It was almost too perfect. I set down my napkin, my heart pounding, and cleared my throat. "Before we wrap up," I said, "I thought we could share something together." Tessa's head snapped toward me. "Ethan, what? Just a little presentation." "Memories. Transparency. You know, support." Lucas laughed, smug. "You didn't tell me you were sentimental, Ethan." I smiled back, sharp. "There's a lot you don't know about me." I gave the signal. Lights dimmed. Conversations hushed. And then, across the wall-mounted screen above the dining room, the first screenshot appeared. Tessa's text. "Can't wait to have you all to myself tonight." Lucas's reply. "You're worth every risk." Kendra's comment. "Don't worry, I'll cover you. He'll never know." The restaurant froze. Forks midair. Eyes wide. I sat perfectly still, watching color drain from Tessa's face, watching Lucas's smirk collapse, watching Kendra's phone lower in slow horror. And I didn't move. Not yet. Because this was just the overture. The real symphony was coming next. The screen glowed above us like judgment itself. Text bubbles spilled across the projection in cold white font. "Tessa, he's asking questions again. Getting suspicious. Lucas, just tell him I'm a night owl. Throw him off. Kendra, LOL. He's so easy to fool." The dining room fell silent. Even the kitchen clatter stopped. Tessa's fork slipped from her hand, clinking against porcelain. Lucas shifted in his seat, jaw clenched, eyes darting for an exit that didn't exist. Kendra whispered something sharp under her breath, but it was drowned out by the ripple of murmurs spreading through the restaurant like fire across dry leaves. More messages flashed. Explicit. Intimate. Photos blurred just enough by the projector's resolution but damning all the same. Dates, times, alibis spelled out in emoji and shorthand. I didn't look at the screen. I didn't need to. I watched their faces instead. That was the real show. Tessa turned toward me, skin drained of color, her lips trembling as though she might protest, might try one last desperate spin. Ethan, stop this. Please. I set my napkin down carefully. Stop what? Telling the truth? You're humiliating yourself. She hissed, voice shaking. No, I said, keeping my tone level cold. I'm reminding you what honesty looks like. Since you seem to have forgotten. Gasps fluttered through the room as another slide came up. A group chat. Lucas, maybe we should cool it. He's onto us. Tessa, no way. I'm not letting his insecurity control me. Kendra, I'll post a group shot. He won't suspect a thing. The final line appeared, a gut punch in pixels. Tessa, he's too boring to figure it out anyway. A woman at the next table muttered, Jesus Christ, loud enough for half the room to hear. Lucas shoved his chair back, trying to stand. I pressed a firm hand to his shoulder. My voice dropped low, lethal. Sit down, Lucas. You don't get to rewrite this scene. Kendra lunged for my phone, eyes wide with panic. Turn it off. You can't just. I leaned back, calm. It's already cued. Runs itself. Like your little cover-ups. The screen went dark. For a heartbeat, silence held us all in its grip. Then came the swell, phones raised, whispers crackling, the sharp smell of scandal filling the air like ozone after lightning. Tessa's mascara was smudging down her cheeks. How could you do this to me? I finally stood, every muscle steady, every word deliberate. You spent months convincing me I was paranoid. That I was small. That I was crazy for seeing what was right in front of me. This isn't me doing something to you, Tessa. This is me holding up the mirror. Lucas found his voice, spitting fury. You're sick. You need help. No, I said. What I need is distance from parasites. Kendra's phone buzzed with notifications. Her own Instagram Live had caught the last few minutes, streaming humiliation in real time. Her face crumpled as she realized it. I dropped enough cash on the table to cover dinner. Not for them, for the staff. For the inconvenience of becoming unwilling witnesses. I'll be at Mason's, I told Tessa, meeting her wet eyes one last time. Have your lawyer call mine. Then I walked out. The air outside hit cold, crisp, full of rain and whispers trailing behind me. Mason leaned against his car, arms folded, expression unreadable. Well? Like a controlled demolition, I said. Precise. Irreversible. He gave a low whistle. And now? No, I answered, looking back at the glowing windows of the restaurant where shadows still shifted and voices still rose. They deal with the rubble. Lightning cracked over the skyline. For the first time in months, I felt clean. By dawn the next morning, the story had already mutated. Kendra's followers spun it first, captions about a toxic husband ambushing his wife in public. Shaky footage of the restaurant scene, sympathetic emojis flooding in. Within hours, Lucas joined the chorus, posting sleek black and white selfies captioned about insecure men who can't handle powerful women having friends. And Tessa? She stayed silent. Her account went dark. For a while, it looked like they might win. That their version, the jealous husband narrative, would smother mine. I felt the cold edge of it when colleagues texted awkward half-questions, when acquaintances avoided eye contact. But truth is stubborn. And truth has receipts. 3 days later, I sat across from Miranda Julian, the CEO of Pinnacle Creative, in a quiet coffee shop downtown. She'd built her agency from nothing, Sharp lines, sharper instincts. Her eyes flicked over the phone I slid across the table, scrolling through texts, expense reports, and threads that exposed not just adultery but embezzlement. Her jaw tightened. I thought it was flirtation. Inappropriate, yes, but harmless? It isn't harmless when they're billing clients for dinners they spend on each other, I said evenly. She kept reading. By the time she set the phone down, her expression was stone. They're suspended effective immediately. And if this checks out, and it will, they won't work in this industry again. For the first time in months, I exhaled without feeling like I was betraying myself. The gala came a week later. A ballroom shimmering with glass and brass, executives in tailored suits, the buzz of champagne-fueled laughter. Tessa and Lucas showed up anyway, clinging to each other like lifelines, desperate to project normalcy. They didn't see it coming. At the height of Miranda's speech, the AV screens behind her flickered to life. Evidence rolled in neat, brutal order, texts about fake alibis, fraudulent invoices laundered through Kendra's consulting firm. Audio of Lucas cornering me in a parking garage, admitting everything while trying to sound like a man in control. The room shifted. Laughter died. Phones rose. Miranda didn't interrupt. She let the truth breathe, let it fill every gilded corner of the hall. When the presentation ended, she stepped forward and said, "Effective immediately, these individuals are terminated. Legal action is pending." The applause that followed wasn't polite. It was thunder. Tessa stood in the center of it all, mascara streaking, her perfect armor cracked. Lucas had gone pale, his swagger gone. Kendra slipped out a side door, phone clutched to her chest like it could shield her. And I just watched. Silent. Steady. Like the eye of the storm I had finally learned to control. 6 months later, the storm had passed. My apartment was smaller, quieter, but filled with something I hadn't felt in years: peace. Mason came by most weekends with takeout. Sarah, Lucas's ex, called sometimes, our strange alliance evolving into cautious friendship. The headlines had faded, but the consequences hadn't. Lucas was serving time for fraud. Kendra's influencer empire had crumbled into dust after her sentencing for laundering. And Tessa, once the woman who told me I was too boring to notice, was adjusting to 18 months in minimum security. I read the news over black coffee one morning, rain streaking the glass, the city humming below. My phone buzzed. "Mason. Any regrets?" He texted. I thought about it. About the humiliation, the destruction, the lives unraveled by choices and consequences. Then I typed back, "No. Just lessons." Because that was the truth. They mistook kindness for weakness. They mistook patience for blindness. They mistook me for someone who wouldn't fight back. They forgot storms don't beg permission to strike. That night, I stood by my window, listening to the low roll of thunder in the distance. Not the violent kind, the steady kind, the kind that reminds you nature doesn't forget, even when people do. And I realized something. I wasn't waiting for the next storm anymore. I was it.